Hey guys, back again with another deck profile video. This is one I haven't touched in a while also. In fact, this is my favorite deck of all time, which is Blue Eyes White Dragon. On the last video, which finally hit 1,000 views, so thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys helping me out here. I actually won second place once with at my locals with Blue Eyes White Dragon. I was undefeated up until I went up against Spirals. But now that the format has entirely changed, I had to reconstruct this Blue Eyes deck completely differently. Because like before, the big threat was True Dracos and Pendulum Magicians, the reason I built the deck the last time that way. But for this new format, we're dealing with Sky Strikers, Trickstar still, Goki, Ultrageist, Spirals are now considered top tier again. So I decided to rebuild it to where I can deal with pretty much anything. Because Blue Eyes right now, it's ranked number 8, so it's essentially rogue deck status. So yes, it is still, it's even though it's low tier meta, it's still a rogue, and it definitely works pretty well against many decks. So, hopefully you guys will enjoy this video, and I'll get right to it. So, of course, starting off, we have the standard 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon. Very iconic, one of the best monsters ever made. Despite even though it's just a normal monster, 3k attack, you can't go wrong with it. But yeah, gotta run it at 3. Next up, we got 3 copies, of Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon. Counts as Blue Eyes White Dragon while it's on the field and in the graveyard. So you just reveal the regular Blue Eyes White Dragon. You can special summon this once per turn, and then once per turn you can also target one monster on your opponent's side of the field and destroy it. But it can attack for the duration of the turn. But still a great card, and works for Synchro and Xyz fodder. Even Fusion as well, now that I think about it. Never run this at 3. Always play this only at 2. In fact, any Blue Eyes player will tell you this as well. But 2 copies of Dragon Spirit of White. Do not attempt to run this at 3. He is way too clunky at 3. But yeah, he counts as a Blue Eyes. And whenever this card is summoned, whether it's normal or special, you can target one spell or trap on your opponent's side of the field and banish it. And also, you can also tag this monster out, so it's quick effect. But only when your opponent controls a monster. And you can special summon one Blue Eyes White Dragon from your hand. So like if your opponent like targets it with a card effect while he has a monster out, you can definitely just tag out for the regular Blue Eyes White Dragon, and basically your opponent loses that target. So really great card, and it also counts as a normal monster while it's in the graveyard. So you can special summon it through the effect of Silver's Cry as well. Alright, now I decided to bump this down to just 1 because now with the new format has changed, it's still reliable, don't get me wrong. But running at 2 does tend to be a bit of a situational problem now, so I decided to just leave it at 1. 1 copy of Archbrave Dragon. Still a great card. If this card is sent to the graveyard during either player's standby phase on the last turn it was sent, you can special summon 1 level 7 or 8 dragon from your graveyard, except itself. And if this card is special summoned from the graveyard, you can banish all spell and trap cards on your opponent's side of the field. Oh, by the way, that's all face-up spell and trap, so face-down ones will not be touched by this effect. But he will gain 200 attack points for every face-up spell or trap that got banished. So it's a really great card, and it helps deal with like problematic cards like Spiral, since they focus a lot on face-up cards, especially face-up spell and traps. You get rid of them, especially that last resort, because it will be treated as a spell while it's equipped to Sleeper. Then your opponent's Spiral Sleeper will be pretty much a sitting duck. So even if he uses its effect then, you can find a way around it and just still be able to beat over it. So definitely a must to run this at least. But again, just 1 is all you're ever going to need. Alright, so moving on, we have 3 copies of Sage with Eyes of Blue. Before I ran it at 2, but now the new format has changed. 3 is now the correct number again. So, whenever this card is normal summon, you can add 1 level 1 Light Tuner from your deck to your hand. So this searches out Effect Veiler, essentially. And also, if this card is in your hand, you can target 1 face-up effect monster you control, discard it, send that monster to the graveyard, and special summon a Blue Eyes. And it combos pretty well with Maiden with Eyes of Blue. So if you target your Maiden, you can also get to trigger off her effect to special summon a Blue Eyes. So yeah, definitely a must. And yeah, it really helps out a lot. Alright, now for the stones, we got 3 copies of White Stone of Ancients. You gotta run 3. I learned that its end phase effect is not a once per turn. So like if you can manage to get 2 stones, you get 2 free Blue Eyes. But the effect that is once per turn is where you banish it to add a Blue Eyes from your graveyard back to your hand. That is a hard once per turn. But the end phase effect is not. So like try to get these into the graveyard as quickly as you can. And yeah, you can basically summon a free Blue Eyes from your deck. And then, of course, we still got the 1 White Stone of Legend, which basically baits out Ash Blossoms, because Ash Blossoms become one of the best hand traps for this format. So like if you play Melody of the Awakening Dragon and you discard this from your hand, even if your opponent Ash Blossoms the Melody of the Awakening Dragon, you still get a free Blue Eyes White Dragon regardless. So that means Ash Blossom didn't really stop your strategy entirely. So definitely a great card. So at least run it at 1. And for the last of the Blue Eye support, we got 1 copy of Maiden with Eyes of Blue, which, again, if she's targeted for an attack or by a card effect, you can special summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon from your hand, deck, or graveyard, but that's once per turn, and it only once that turn. And also, when she's attacked, she switches to defense mode. So against Chaos Max players, that's actually kind of bad. So that's why, like, if I'm up against Chaos Max, I have to make sure I have Sage in my hand before I summon out Maiden. Like, get rid of her, then, that way she's not just like a 0 defense that can get double piercing damage, because that's a one-shot kill right there. Next up, we got 1 copy of Master with Eyes Blue. He recycles your effect Veiler. In fact, pretty much every tuner in this deck. Master, when he's normal summoned, you could add 1 level 1 light tuner from your graveyard back to your hand. And if this card is in your graveyard, you can target 1 effect monster you control, shuffle this card back to your hand, and then send that effect monster to the grave. And once that resolves, you can special summon a Blue Eyes from your graveyard. So this also combos off pretty well with Maiden with Eyes of Blue. But the fact that you can also bring back your effect Veiler and basically keep spamming it over and over again, it's also really badass. Alright, so for the last monsters, we got 1 copy of Globe Bulb. I got this idea from that video from Team Samurai. I really thought this was great. I never would have thought to play Globe Bulb, honestly. And now that I see how useful it really is, it's definitely a must for a Blue Eyes player. So definitely run 1 Globe Bulb. Basically, as long as it's in your graveyard, you can send the top card of your deck to the graveyard, special summon it, but you can only use this effect once per duel. But the fact that it's also a tuner helps you bring out Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon a lot faster. As for the hand tropes, we got 2 copies of Ash Blossom, which really works well with this deck too, because I managed to find a way to make room for it, and the fact that, again, it's one of the better hand traps for this format. It was either this or Drone Lockbird, but I felt like Drone Lockbird was just a little too much, so I was like, you know what, let's just go with Ash Blossom, because, again, we already have Veiler, and Veiler is very searchable and very recyclable in this deck, so of course we run 1 copy of Veiler. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the monsters. Alright, so moving on to spells. First off, we got 3 copies of Melody of the Awakening Dragon. Don't try to run it any less than that. Always run it at least at 3. I used to run it at 2, but now that I realize like it's actually more useful than I thought it would be. So yeah, and again, it helps you bait out Ash Blossoms, especially if one of the white stones. That way, even if you don't get your Blue Eyes cards, like the cards you're trying to search out, you at least get something out of it by discarding the card for cost. So yeah. And since we run a lot of level 8s, 3 trade-ins, because this deck relies a lot on monsters being in the graveyard. So you discard 1 level 8 monster, draw 2 cards. And believe me when I say this, the draw power in this deck is so real. Like, you really got to do a lot of draw power. Next up, of course, we got the God Revival card. 3 copies of Return of the Dragon Lords. Target 1 level 7 or 8 dragon from your graveyard and special summon it, so you can bring back Archbrave Dragon this way as well. And of course, if your dragon type monsters, not just one, you can is about to be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card, and then yeah, those monsters will not be destroyed for that one time. So great card, and it's not once per turn either. Now I decided to bump this down to just 1. Dragon Shrine. Dragon Shrine was also a good card to bait out Ash Blossoms, but and the good thing about that was that, you know, like if you had 2 of them in your hand, that means you get to activate a second one, because Ash Blossom negated the entire effect. And the reason you were allowed to activate a second one is because Dragon Shrine doesn't necessarily come with cost. That's why. But now that things are a little different, even if you don't get ashed and you still had a second one in your hand, you're kind of just stuck with it until your next turn, and after that it just kind of becomes useless. And when you do manage to successfully activate it, yeah, then you won't be able to activate another one. So instead of a second Dragon Shrine, we decided to throw in Foolish Burial. So like if you open up with both of these in your hand, then great. You can get one of your Blue Eyes to the graveyard along with 2 copies of Whitestone of Ancients, and still get 2 free Blue Eyes White Dragons out on the field. So definitely run 1 and 1. Again, Dragon Shrine was just starting to become a lot more situational now with this new format. It's just, wasn't working at 2 anymore. So I decided to follow the idea of, yeah, running 1 of each. I was totally against running this at up to this point, now that I realize how it really helps out this deck a lot, especially because you search out everything, and once you get everything you need, it really doesn't become a hindrance. So I decided to run 1 copy of Pot of Desires. So yeah, like, I know, like, you would think, like, yeah, it's a neg 9, but I never really saw it as a neg 9, or technically it's a neg 11, but, yeah, it really didn't become a hindrance as I thought it would be. So yeah, definitely run 1 Pot of Desires. You don't have to run it at 2, just 1 is all you need. Because again, you're going to be able to search out everything you need, and by then, you won't really have to worry about banishing any of your Blue Eyes White Dragons. Of course, we got Card of Consonants as well, which helps you, which is just an added bonus. Because again, draw power, so real. Instead of Burst Stream of Destruction, I decided to run Raigeki. Because, like, yeah, Burst Stream of Destruction was a great card and all. And the fact that it was searchable if you banished Mausoleum of White from your graveyard. But your Blue Eyes White Dragons just weren't allowed to attack if you played it. So that was the only weakness to that card. I mean, it never really affected me too much, because I can easily just go into some Xyz plays. But after a while of consideration, I decided to just take out the Mausoleum and Burst Stream of Destruction, just run with Raigeki. And of course, we got Twin Twisters, which again, you could just pitch one of your stones, pop 2 spells and traps your opponent controls, and yeah, just get rid of them. We got Monster Reborn. I mean, come on. You saw that coming. I decided to run Soul Charge again, because, or I never really ran Soul Charge up till now, but I decided to run it anyway now, because, like, if I personally like to go second with this deck. It can go first, don't get me wrong. This deck does great going first or second. But if I'm gonna go first, and if I open up with this card, I like to send everything I need to the graveyard, special summon it, pay my due, pay my life points and all that, and then start setting up my board with, like, some really powerful monsters, and yeah, just be ready. And then finally, we have 1 copy of Silver Scry. Not 2 anymore, just because, like, since you already do plenty of Revival, I felt like 2 was overkill as well. So I was like, okay, yeah, 1 Silver Scry should do just fine. Because you already got Return of the Dragon Lords, you got your Soul Charge, you got your Monster Reborn, you got your Arcbreak Dragon, so you got more than enough Revival. And of course, we have Azure Eyes Silver Dragon. And if you notice, no traps. Like, this deck does not run traps at all. Alright, so that's it for the main deck. Let's go ahead and move on over to the extra deck. So starting off, we have 2 copies of this Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon. Amazing card. The fact that it still stops pendulums even now. So, like, if this card prevents both you and your opponent from special summoning 2 monsters at the same time. So, like, with pendulum summoning, they can't summon 2 monsters. They have to just pendulum summon 1 monster, and that's it. They're done. And once per turn, you can negate a graveyard effect that your opponent tries to activate. So, like, that's also pretty good. And, of course, during either player's turn, you can tag out and special summon 1 Dragon-type Synchro monster as long as it's light attribute, but it has to be in defense mode. So then we can go into Azure Eyes Silver Dragon, which, great card because, like, he negates the negative effect of Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon, because at the end phase of the turn that you summon a monster using Spirit Dragon's effect, it gets destroyed, but Azure Eyes negates that negative effect, so that's also good. And once per turn during your standby phase, you can target 1 normal monster in your graveyard and special summon it. And also, on the turn that Azure Eyes is special summoned, all dragons you currently control cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects until the end of the next turn. So if you activate this during your opponent's turn, or if you summon them during your opponent's turn, yeah, the effect will stay in effect until your next turn ends. So that's why it's really good. Let me go and just bring out the last 2 synchros. With Spirit Dragon, I sometimes like to bring out, of course, Black Rose Moonlight Dragon. I would have run Ancient Fairy Dragon if it didn't get banned. Honestly, I feel like she didn't deserve it. Ancient Fairy did not deserve to get banned at all. But oh well. Black Rose Moonlight Dragon is equally as good because it's a level 7 monster. And also, whenever this card is special summoned, you can bounce back 1 monster that was special summoned on your opponent's side of the field and send it back to his hand. And also, yeah, so it's just a really great card, and it helps me deal with the, what do you call it, the Trickster OTK, where they use the Firewall crap, where they keep spamming Lilybell's effect. So usually what I do is, like, let Lilybell special summon herself back from her own effect, you know, and then once it attacks me, I immediately bounce it. I immediately tag out with Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon, bring out Moonlight Dragon, and bounce Lilybell back to hand, because after that point, Lilybell will become completely useless, and Firewall Dragon can't do shit. So, like, yeah, it's really good. So definitely run this instead. And of course, for the last synchro, we do bring out Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. Now that it's a lot easier with the glow up bulb, I decided to, keep it in there. And the fact that Crystal Wing, can negate any monster effect and gain and honest themselves when he engages in battle with a level 5 or higher monster, he's definitely a must. Alright, so that's it for synchros. Now for the Xyz monsters. Starting off, we have one copy of Divine Dragon Knight Felgrand. Detach one Xyz monster, or one Xyz material, and you can target one face-up monster on the field this turn, and its effects are negated, but it is unaffected by other card effects. So you can literally just target your own Blue Eyes White Dragon because it doesn't have any effects, but he'll be safe from like cards like Borlo Dragon. You'll be, anything that would really hurt your deck. So definitely a must. One Galaxy Eye Cypher Dragon, which we never use its effect, honestly. We just use it just because it's there. Only just to get into Galaxy Eye Cypher Blade Dragon, because you can detach one Xyz material, target one card on the field, and destroy it. And also, if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon one Galaxy Eye Cypher Dragon from your graveyard. So you could really just bring back another 3K beats deck. Of course, we also have Galaxy Eyes Tachyon Dragon, which also requires 2 level 8 monsters. And at the start of the battle phase, you can detach one Xyz material, negate all other card effects, and if your opponent activates an effect, this card gains 1,000 attack and defense points, and also it can attack twice during your battle phase, so that's why it's really good. And also we have Galaxy Eyes Dark Matter Dragon, because you also want to try to get all your dragons into the graveyard as quickly as possible, so that's why I decided to run it. And it can only attack twice on monsters, sadly, but even then, that's not too bad. Alright, so for the fusions, we have one copy of First of the Dragons. Now, in case you're wondering, yes, I do have a fusion card in the deck, but it's actually on the side now. It's Dragon's Mirror. So, like, whenever I decide to, bring out some fusion plays, I'll side in my Dragon's Mirror and just bring out, like, all my Blue Eyes fusion monsters, including... And even though this one's not fusion, it's not Blue Eyes, I'm sorry, he's still really good because he's unaffected by monster effects and can only be destroyed in battle by a normal monster. So that's why I run it. Of course, we got the standard Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. Why not? It's 45k. Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate, which can attack an additional time for every Blue Eyes fusion monster you send to the graveyard. So, also a great card. And during either player's turn, whenever a card or effect is activated that targets a Blue Eyes monster, you can banish this card from the graveyard, negate the activation, and destroy that card. And finally, we have Twin Burst Dragon, which is really great against Chaos Max players too, or any monster that can't be destroyed in battle. So, like, when I'm up against Spiral Sleepers, and if I already have a Return of the Dragon Lords in the graveyard, I'm safe, because even if he tries to destroy it, I can banish it, and don't worry, and never worry about losing Twin Burst. And even if though Sleeper can't be destroyed in battle while equipped with Last Resort, when Twin Burst Dragon fails to destroy a monster in battle, he automatically banishes that monster and does not target and it does not destroy. And also, he can attack twice on monsters as well. Alright, so that's it for the main and extra deck. Let's go and move on to the side deck. Now, believe it or not, I can actually turn my Blue Eyes deck into a totally different deck, which is Felgrand. So, like, there's a lot of ways I can flex around and still be able to pull off, like, a really excellent deck. But if I decided to change it out, basically I built my Blue Eyes tour where it has 2 decks in one. But for the side, we have 3 copies of Divine Dragon Lord Felgrand. And if I bring him in, I have to change my deck entirely to being a Felgrand focused deck. And of course, we have another copy of Arcbreak Dragon. But that's okay, because again, this deck is so flexible to where I can actually pull this off. But depending on what I'm up against, I will sometimes change my deck entirely into a Felgrand focused deck. But what Felgrand does is that whenever this card is special summoned from the graveyard, you get to banish one monster on your opponent's side of the field or in this graveyard, and it gains attack points equal to that monster's level or rank. And also, if this card destroys a monster in battle, you can special summon a level 7 or 8 dragon from your graveyard. So you can literally combo it off with Arcbrave, deal with some face-up spell or traps, banish them, and there you go. We have one copy of Deep Ice, so whenever a Blue Eyes monster is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand, target one dragon-type monster in your graveyard, and it gains attack points equal to that monster's attack. And of course, sometimes I can pull it off, but not often, which is the Blue Eyes Shining Dragon. One Darkness Metal, and a Morphage Goliath, which locks out extra deck, but never usually a hindrance because we hardly ever access the extra deck half the time, just because, Blue Eyes is already powerful in its own right. But again, if I'm going to change this deck into a Felgrand engine, I have to run these. 3 copies of Dragon Ravine, which you can discard 1 card and send 1 dragon monster to the graveyard. and of course 2 copies of Terraforming, just to search it out. And finally we have 1 for 1 and Dragon's Mirror. Just because, like, sometimes I will cite in Dragon's Mirror or 1 for 1 inside the Blue Eyes just by itself, not with a filigrane, but just by itself. I can pull off like a lot of cool plays with these, so that's why I decided to cite them out just because they're not quite as neat as I initially thought they would be. But you know, whenever it's a must, I will cite them in and deal with my opponent that way. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. So hopefully you guys enjoy that, and yeah, leave a like and a subscribe, and catch you on the next video.